Hello everyone, it is Finchinator here. So lately I've been having some issues with my internet at my house, and that has prevented me from being confident enough to just ladder like I do with my normal lives. However, I do have some alternative programming for all of my viewers out there and others interested in this specific type of content, and that is the kind of personal tier list for the metagames that I play. So this is for SMOU, this video. If you haven't checked it out before, I just did black and white last night. It seems like that video was received pretty well. However, SMOU is what I consider to be my second best generation of overused, and also metagame that I've played countless games in over the years. So I have a lot of input to say on this. So let's get into it. First and foremost, Tier 1 is consisted of the four best Pokemon, also known as the four quote-unquote S-rank Pokemon. All these Pokemon at one point in time I've considered the best Pokemon outright in SSAU. Right now, I'm between Toxapex, Landorus, and Magee Rinna. Initially, I had Magee Rinna second, but I talked to some people like ABR, and they said they thought I had Magee Rinna too high. We'll get into why I think it could easily be 1, 2, or 3 in a little bit. But for now, just note the top four, in my opinion, the clear top tier. The S rank of SMOU, in my eyes, would be Toxapex, Landorus, Team, Magee Rinna, and Heatran. So let's start at the top. Toxapex, the Pokemon that I rank number 1 right now. You could argue that it's hard to rank a Pokemon like Toxic number 1 because, in a way, a lot of things naturally check and counter it. For example, if you were to scroll down the list, you could see things like Magma Storm Heatran, or Gliscor, or Swords Dance Cortana, or Mega Latios, or Mega Alakazam, or Garchomp, Mega Medicham, Tapu Lele, Excadrill, so on and so forth. And you're thinking, okay, so we have a defensive Pokemon that a lot of common offensive and bulky presences can and will manhandle. What makes Toxapex so special? And I have to say that while plenty of things are able to muscle through it, it also has this perfect blend of being able to make progress and not be too passive while also walling a very practical set of Pokemon. For example, it is the premier Greninja check in the metagame. While there are plenty of things that could switch into it, a lot of others are a bit more clunky, such as Chansey, or even Tapu Bulu. While Tapu Bulu is a convenient Pokemon used in some structures, it's not the best defensively, of course. Being able to sponge Dark Pulses when running especially a defensive set, and of course sponge any Hydro Pump is great. On top of that, it can wall protein sets, assuming they lack either Z Dig or the rare, very rare extrasensory, so that's also worth noting. But on top of this, it's not only that they could wall. It's able to sit on Tornado Starion, non-Magma Storm Heatran, non-Thunderbolt Calm Mind Magee Rinna, and so on and so forth. If you go down the list, you'll see things like Celesteela it doesn't mind. It could haze off any Calm Mind Clefable, which is great. Megalopony it should be able to keep in check. Tapu Fini it could knock, and potentially, although it's got to watch out for Whirlpool sets. Yeah, Scizor, it's the best Volcarona counter probably besides Chansey. Zardex, if it's physically defensive, it could handle. Most Como, it's also just great at spreading status. But honestly, what's so great about it is, see, Clefable and Reuniclus never truly took off the great extent they have in other generations in SMOU. And Toxapex's ability to run Scald plus Toxic or Baneful Bunker actually makes it kind of hard for offensive teams to deal with. In a way, they're always constantly at risk. They're always constantly on a timer against Toxapex. And the fact that it can always wall at least one or two Pokemon they have on their team and check, like soft check one or two others probably, that coupled with the fact that even if it's taken down from like a Volt Switch from Magee Rinna or Roden Wash or a couple of Hurricanes from 20HC, it can always regen it off and be healthy afterwards. It just makes it borderline unfair for those teams to deal with. It's quite oppressive in a sense, and therefore you kind of have to go out of your way to make sure that you're okay against Toxapex with some certain types of bulky offense. It's just so well against those teams. On top of that, it's a great Toxic Spike setter if you want to go for that, and there are a lot of common Pokemon that you see that are Toxic Spike vulnerable. While the entirety of the top four Pokemon are actually good against them, you'll see Pokemon such as Greninja, Mega Alakazam, Garchomp, Megalopony, all four Tapus, Chansey, etc. Serperior, a lot of them taking Toxic Spike damage. And that, even if it only hits two or three Pokemon on your team, would be really annoying because think about the matchup that Toxapex has with common defoggers. Landorus T, it's never going to be able to really reliably defog against Toxapex because Scald's doing upwards of 40% when you're a Choice Scarf variant, which is the only variant that runs defog, and you're constantly putting yourself at risk for Toxic or Burn, and Earthquake doesn't kill in one hit anyway. So that's not a reliable remover of Toxic Spike, especially since it's not a durable Pokemon. Defog Gliscor is the one thing that's great against it, in all honesty. So as long as you don't like switch into a Scald and get burnt, which is end of the world, then you're great. There's like Zapdos, but Zapdos is potentially susceptible to Toxic. Toxic plus Toxic Spike is a viable combination, by the way. The inbuilt versatility of Toxic is low-key something that's underwhelming, underestimated rather as well, not underwhelming. It's quite good about it. Excadrill can't switch into Scald. Tornadus T just doesn't really handle it well. Even if it's taunt, it can only be a temporary stop. It's going to take burn or going to take Baneful Bunker and knock a U-turn. So yeah, all things considered, Toxapex is a behemoth defensively and on the utility side in SMOU. It has just unmatched walling capabilities in terms of like how it fares against bulky offensive teams. I mean, you see so many clunky cores with like Scarf Cortana plus Pivot Rotom Wash plus like Assault Vest Magee Rinna with like a breaker like Ash Greninja or Mega Metachamp. And odds are only one of those like 4 or 5 Pokemon cores you see on those bulky offensive teams really has a chance of 1v1ing Toxapex, especially without incurring much risk. And those teams, their lack of longevity relative to Toxapex having Regenerator, Black Sludge, and Recover, of course, really makes it hard for those teams to deal with Toxapex. And of course, it doesn't only do well against bulky offense as well. Against Hyper Offense, Toxic Spikes is just phenomenal. Even if Hyper Offense is dropped a lot in usage against rain teams, Toxic Spikes are great, and also Toxic is hard to break without Swampert, which of course risks status each and every time. Against Balance, yeah, there usually are Pokemon like Gliscor or Pokemon like Clefable take advantage of it, or even Mount Alexander take advantage of it, but it's still capable of walling things and making progress, forcing status, forcing certain switch patterns that you can take advantage of and regenerate health off if you're taking weak resisted attacks and switching. So it's just really a catalyst, and it's not only good on like really fat teams, it's good on balance as well. I mean, there was even a point in the metagame when Toxic's offense was pretty good, black during SPL 8-ish time, but that's no more. You don't really see Toxics in like full-on bulky offense anymore. It's more balanced in bulkier teams. So yeah, but with that said, Toxapex is, in my opinion, the best Pokemon in SMOU. I think you could argue for it anywhere in the top 3, though, alongside Landorus T and Magee Rinna. So let's discuss these. Landorus T, probably most commonly used as a choice scarper right now, which is fine, as it's one of the more convenient offensive defoggers in the tier. And on top of that, Scarf Landorus T is just a timeless Pokemon being able to soft check things like Garchomp, very soft check things like Cortana and Mawile, revenge kill things like Mega Alakazam, Mega Latios, Tornadus T, if it has the right coverage, and so on and so forth. However, in my opinion, and again, this is just my opinion, best sets are these Z variants. And honestly, they don't even see enough usage in my eyes, but they're so strong to the point where people like CL were outspoken in saying that Landorus T should be suspected or banned. And honestly, at points in time, Landorus T saw north of 45-50% usage, which is kind of what we're seeing with Clefable right now in SS, but for completely different reasons. It was an offensive wrecking ball. The Z sets were just absurdly strong. And honestly, to this day, there are no hard counters to Z-Rock Landorus T besides like Quagsire and Pyukumuku. Even then, if they take hazards upon switching, it's going to be rough. Z-Fly, of course, also pinch you with a nuke, although that is walled by things like, say, Celesteela, physically defensive Rotom Wash, Zapdos in a pinch. So you got to be careful there, especially since once you use that Z-Fly, you're kind of left short-handed. On top of that, it could also be a nice bulky stealth rocker with a pinch berry or rocky helmet or even leftovers as well. So there are a lot of things you could get out of Landorus T, and I think it's just a great Pokemon in the metagame. And while it's a bit less potent right now, I'd still say you have to include it within your top 4 no matter what. In addition to this, 145 base attack with Intimidate to buff the defense to being very respectable. It's just such an underrated combination, and that's why Landorus T is always going to be a very viable option in the OU metagames you find it in. It just offers so much utility. It offers so much offensive presence combined with convenient defensive pivoting that it's always going to be one of the best game flow Pokemon. It's always going to be one of the best breakers, and you can't really deny that fact. And it does very much apply that way to the SMOU metagame. So one should not be mistaken in saying, oh, I don't see Z Landorus a ton. I see Scarf mainly, and Scarf just kind of does its job, but it's sort of like on the fringe of pedestrian, if you will, in terms of offensive threateningness, because you sort of can predict what it does. And yeah, I get it, but it's still forcing switches, forcing patterns of plays to the point that it's great, and it still can get hazards off with defog or be used to pivot into certain things. And overall, I just view Scarf Landorus T as a great Pokemon, and Landorus T overall as an even better Pokemon due to the potency of the Z sets. And I hope to see a shift in SMOU so we see more Z Landorus T, specifically Z Rock Landorus T. I feel like Z Rock Garchomp still some thunder, admittedly, but the day we see more and more of that, I think is the day that Landorus T probably goes to number 1 over Toxapex in my eyes, just because it really is uncountered in my eyes. So yeah, that's definitely something to make note of as well. Next up, we have Magee Rinna. Sorry, I just had to get a little drink of water. There were definitely times when Magee Rinna much like Landorus T, was the number one Pokemon in SMOU, in my opinion. And honestly, I think you can still make a very strong case for that now as well. Magee Rinna is the epitome of versatility in the metagame. It can run Z sets with Combine, Z sets with Shift Gear, Z sets with Shift Gear and Combine. It can run bulky sets with Pain Split or even Confide plus one of Confide or Heart Swap plus Pain Split and Leftovers, or even Shuckaberry utility sets. You can run a whole slew of support moves, viably speaking. You could run Assault Vest, and there's so many different team structures you could find it on. I've even seen it on Stall, but of course, it's most commonly seen on Balance and Bulky Offense. Although, if Hyper Offense with like screens everywhere to come back, Magee Rinna would be one of the prime win conditions with a Shift Gear variant. So it's something to make note of as well. And also, it was like the OG broken Z move user on the special side of the spectrum. And it still kind of holds that title in my eyes. It has a whole plethora of viable coverage moves: Flare Cannon, Focus Blast, Flash Cannon, Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Focus Blast. All of them usable, of course, in conjunction with Calm Mind or not, if you want to go with 3 attacks. And if you're not feeling the Z moves in any particular instance, or you have another Z move use, you could always use Iapa Berry, or you could use Shuka Berry, or even Aka Berry, I've seen here and there. On top of that, on screens, we've even seen weakness policies. So yeah, just with the offensive sleeping variants alone, which aren't even the most common Magee Rinna sets right now, there's so much versatility, and all of those sets have a ton of merit in context of the metagame, which I don't think anything else could really ever say in the history of any OU, barring maybe Tyranitar in DPP OU, and sort of Tyranitar in Black-White OU. I guess if you would venture on ADV, you could say that about things like Celebi and Tyranitar, but I don't play ADV in OU enough, and I don't think that the user base that's following my channel has much to comment on that metagame either. Um, Moving along though, the utility sets are probably the most common right now, and that's for great reason. First and foremost, the Pain Split Plus, usually I'd use Heart Swap with Flash Cannon, Flare Cannon, or Ice Beam and Volt Switch, especially defensive infested, is still a great dark check for Ash Greninja, and on top of that, it can be a soft check to Mega Latios and Mega Latias, offensively speaking, while living any one hit for Mega Mawile and doing a number back to it or pivoting out around it, which is huge. It also can be a flying resist for 2018 if your team lacks something like Toxapex or Tapu Koko as well. But moving beyond that, it's one of the few things that's able to take advantage of Combine, Tapulele, sorry, the other tab on my computer, that's the viability rankings. Just kind of like went dead for a second, but yeah, we're good. Any Tapulele could eat 2 spec hits from anything, and of course, if they're on like the Combine 3 tech Z set, you take advantage of that. One of the few hard answers to Combine Clef that aren't Haze, Toxapex, or Taunt Heatran. Opposing Shift Gear Magee Rinna is actually best countered by this type of Magee Rinna set, especially if it's not Z Steel, as then they can't break through you. You can steal their boost, and then you can set up in their face. And honestly, sometimes that leads to the game snowballing out of their way if you're facing more of a novice player that doesn't anticipate that set. Other things like Rio Nicholas can be kept in check. Superior, it's a great answer to Superior in a pinch. The very rare common Mega Slowbro. Yeah, and there are a couple other things as well. For example, there have been times when I faced things like, oh yeah, Combine Mega Latias. That's what I was thinking of. Combine Mega Latias. It gets to play +2 or +3, and it's about starts to empowering, but then you swap it out, and then you could either go for Flare Cannon just to nuke it, or if you don't have Flare Cannon, you Flash Cannon, then you could go for a Volt Switch, and then pivot out something safe like Greninja without risking taking the coverage move, or something like a Scarflanders to start forcing U-turn sequences, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's actually a really practical set, and Pain Split goes a long way because there are a lot of Pokemon that are tending to stay healthy later on in games, like Regenerator Toxapex or Toxic or Poison Heal Gliscor. So very, very worthwhile in my eyes. So yeah, combining the effectiveness and the practical splashability of the defensive sets with the potency and the sheer versatility of the offensive variants, and I think you have what might be the Pokemon that has aged just the most consistently and always been the most top tier presence in the current metagame. But I do have it at number 3 right now just because Landorus T offers so much, and Toxapex is just an unmatched presence on the defensive end of the things and utility end of things as well. Of course, though, you could really argue any order of these 3. I do think Heatran is a clear-cut number 4, however. And there was a point in time when Heatran was the face of the metagame. In fact, there was a point in time when Z, Magma Storm, Heatran, not Z on Magma Storm, but Magma Storm with Z, it could be Z Fire, Z Steel, or Z Earth Power as well, was seen as broken just because there was so little counterplay to it. In fact, it led to something like Adios Mega being kind of invented by ABR and Fugo many stakes ago. I think that was Smogon Stake Draft 1, actually, and then it picked up a bit more closer to Smogon Stake Draft 2. Anyway, the combination of that, things like Garchomp picking up popularity, and people using more and more Mega Alakazam, which can trace /fire, made it great. However, the one cool thing about Heatran is it actually adapted to those things. It stopped running Z Fire and even Z Ground, and it started running Z Steel, even with Modest, to nuke Garchomp, to nuke Megaladios, and to nuke Flash Fire Trace to Mega Alakazam. And I think that adaptability actually had me convinced it was broken for a couple months there, in all honesty, because really no one used Gliscor, which now is seen as a great answer to it. Um, all of those things weren't safe from Z Steel, as we mentioned before. Rotom W was, at that point in time, not really a great Pokemon. So you had a lot of people banking on kind of shaky or unreliable strategies to it. Heatran was picking up kills as an offensive threat as opposed to just a defensive behemoth with a ton of support options and Stealth Rock at its usage. So there was a time when Heatran was not only a premier defensive threat, but also a premier offensive threat. And just the combination of traits that it brought to the table made it unlike anything else, and arguably the top tier Pokemon in, say, mid to late 2017 into 2018 even. Of course, now it has sunk a little bit. We're seeing more and more Gliscor than ever. In fact, spoiler alert, it's in my second tier. But on top of that, also, Z moves are really used a lot more on things like Magee Rinna, on Garchomp, on Cortana, on Tornadus T, even on Magnezone. So all of a sudden, there's a lot more competition for Z moves, and with the rise of Magirna, the rise of Tornadus T, and the rise of Mega Mawile, even it saw a bit of a second surge during the later months of SM. You could argue that a defensively oriented Heatran is also much more practical to use, and I think that just the fact of the matter is that without something like Wish Clef, it's also just hard to rely on Z Heatran to check many things. So therefore, the metagame saw a shift, and while Magnestorm Heatran is still a great Pokemon, and if you switch Pex into Magnestorm, you're basically dead on the spot. Um, it definitely is a bit more of a bulkier setup now. Its profile it previously identified as more of a threat, but now it's more of a utility presence. And Heatran is still a timeless SM Pokemon, and I don't think you could replace it in the metagame no matter how hard you tried. But I think it's clearly fourth behind the top three, and it's still just on the edge of S rank or tier one, if you will. But it's not quite solidly anymore. I could see it dropping to A plus before I could see Cartana rising to S or tier one and tier two, if you will, to apply to this video, if that makes sense. However, others feel differently. In fact, a lot of other people believe that Cartana is broken in the metagame. I'm personally not all the way there. I just think it's very, very good. A lot of people could even rank Cartana all the way up there with Toxapex, which I think is a bit much. I think that you got to be a bit out there. There are still lots of sightings of Megaladios and Megaladios, which soft check it. Magnezone's at an all-time high, and while Celesteela is used quite little, Tornadus T checks everything that's non-Z normal. Same with Zapdos. You have Rocky Helmet Tangrowth seeing more and more usage than ever before. And also, Discard Victini can switch in anything but knockoff. Mega Aggron on bulkier teams is seeing more usage than ever before as well. So I just feel like the metagame actually isn't super friendly to it, despite the sheer effectiveness and the outright amazing sheer power that it gives off. Wow, I just used the word sheer in like the same sentence twice. That is awkward. Let's ignore that phraseology there and move on. So I guess let's use this as a segue to Cortana. Cortana is the top of tier 2 for me, and again, I get why some people put it in the top 4, but I don't think it's there yet. I think there are too many things going against it. But I do think it's still great. It has like 170, 180 some odd attack. Hold up. What base attack is Cortana? I'm guessing somewhere in 170s. Let's say like 172. But it might be higher, honestly. I don't know. 181. Jesus. Is 181 base attack. I mean, do you know how high that is? That's like absurd. I mean, you can hit like 500 attack if you run Adamant Nature on that. Like, can you realize how much 500 is? And no, I'm not suggesting run Adamant Cartana. That's a stupid idea. It's a congested speed tier. But that, coupled with the fact that there's 109 speed, which does fall short of the Megalodies, unfortunately, but still leaves it faster than the entirety of S tier and things like Garchomp or Tapu Lele or Victini, for example, is still pretty huge, I would say. So yeah, that's great. And also, its physical bulk is actually kind of nice. While it does only have like 60 base HP, its base defense is north of 130, if I recall correctly, and that allows it to take things like earthquakes or even a hit from opposing Kartana, or even it has a good chance of living a +2 sacrifice from Mala at full, unless your Empo and the roll goes against your favor. Sorry, buddy. I really unfortunate run there. You had a great tournament. Don't ever let yourself get down over that. But that aside, while it does have obviously pitiful special bulk, and there are things designated to sort of checking it, like Rocky Helmet Tangrowth, Zapdos, Scarf on the Magnezone. Cortana offers a whole slew of very effective offensive sets. Choice Scarf being one of the best sets and the most timeless sets, as it's a great late game win condition. It's a great revenge killer. It does so much, and it actually still is not weak despite holding the Choice Scarf instead of a Z or a Choice Band. Choice Band is a bit more break oriented, but of course it's still not slow because it's Cortana, so that's great. In all honesty, nothing truly counters a Choice Band with Cortana. You could argue Mega Scizor, but even that's taking close to 40% from Sacred Sword sometimes. And with rocks up and just any chip before that, say you turn into a Rocky Helmet Tornado's T and you want to get out of there, or even knock off into it, want to get out of there because you're scared of taking, say, a Heat Wave or a Hurricane if you're low. Then, all of a sudden you're just like, oh shit, cart. And that also obviously threatens a Magnezone with the kill. So if you say go to your Magnezone expecting a non-choice band Sacred Sword and you take a Sacred Sword to switch and you're gone. So it's pretty cool as well. And Smart Strike, your knockoff, can actually do a number to Rock Helmet Tangrowth, which goes a long way. And it also can 2 KO Zapdos after Stealth Rock, which is great. So yeah, those are great. But what might be the icing on the cake is the Z sets on Cortana. Z sets on Cortana are great. It could run Z Grass, Z Fight, Z Steel, or Z Normal. Personally, Z Steel I'm not too big on. Actually, I went a bit more in depth on that in my video, my series against Corazon, where he used it without even Swords Dance, which completely defeats the purpose of it. But that aside, Cortana offers so much on the physically offensive end of the spectrum. It's unlike any other Pokemon in the metagame, and I'm honestly curious to see what the next big set on it is. As we've seen it adapt over time, it went from Choice Band being really good to Choice Scarf being back then on top, then Choice Band again. And then Z Normal really had like an amazing run for the money to take out Mega Latios, and Mega Latias, and Tornado's T, and Zapdos. And now we're kind of at this fringe where Choice Scarf's great, and Z Normal is great. Choice Band's seen a little dip in uses, but in my opinion, it's still great. It's really kind of timeless in a way that it just forces so much damage. So yeah, the paper, if you will, is actually very strong. Moving beyond that is Megalodios, which is something that personally I've never been as high in others as until recently, where I've noticed it's actually super practical for checking things like Heatran that like Toxic, opposing Cartana that aren't choice banded knockoff, soft checking Tornado Seed like Taunt, and then also it can eat non-Shadow Ball Mega Alakazam, and Z-Rock Garchomp is a huge one. Also, Tapu Koko with soft checks, Gliscor it's basically counter to if it lacks Toxic, so on and so forth. The fact of the matter is that Megalodios, when not facing Pursuit, which is increasingly uncommon in the metagame, is just phenomenal. I think that Megalodios actually is the top ranked Mega for me, right? Yeah, it is, and I don't think I would have said that during most of SM until all the way to end, but it just got a lot better, and it stuck with things, and the utility it had just kept getting better and better, bolstered more and more by the context of the metagame surrounding it. And the fact of the matter is that context is very friendly to it, as opposed to some of the other Pokemon we've mentioned recently. So while it might have been closer to like the 12th to 15th best Pokemon in the metagame, currently I have it at number 6. I think you could argue number 7 behind Gliscor, or maybe even Ash Greninja as well, before you could argue ahead of Cortana, or even anywhere close to the top 4. I don't think it's there at all, but I do think it's a great Pokemon. I think ranking it anywhere in your top 10 is completely valid from like 5 to 10, honestly. But I personally have it at number 6, and I hope you guys respect that. I know it's probably a bit more of an outlier opinion, um, but it is what it is. This is just my personal list again. If you don't remember my little precursor warning before the black and white video, then basically I just want to say these are my personal opinions. You're entitled to other opinions. If you want to disagree in the comments, feel free to. Of course, I'm always here to listen to other opinions and have civilized discussions about Pokemon. That's something I really enjoy having. But my personal opinion is this, and here's why. And that's not me trying to shove it down your throat. Say this is the right way. It's more this is how I feel. Feelings, of course, can differ between individuals without any problems happening. So yeah, Gliscor is the next Pokemon. I'm just going to pause, get water really quickly. So actually, take a 5 minute break there. But if I recall, I was ranting and raving about how good Cortana was. So yeah, Cart is just a great, versatile, physically offensive presence. It could run Scarf, it could run Band, and it could run Z sets. I'm sorry if I got sidetracked there. I'm gonna go to Megaladia. Actually, wait. No, I already covered. I was on Megaladias, wasn't I? Yeah, I was saying how Megaladias, I probably rank it higher than most people, but it's a great utility presence. Okay, I'm going to assume I was there. So let's just get back to the start of Megaladias. Let's just say we're there. I'm so sorry. This is like the most awkward time in the video. But yeah, it's great for checking non-toxic Heatran or even Toxic Heatran in the short haul, I guess. Best counter to Gliscor in the metagame, of course. Ice Beam, and it takes +2 facade easily, so on and so forth. It can soft check Cortana, especially if it's Mega Evolved, and it can live anyone knockoff, but yeah, it beats both stabs, and Sacred Sword, and you can live a hit from Z normal easily and then kill it back. Um, Good against Mega Exam lacking Shadow Ball, it even shrugs off Hidden Power Ice. Z Rock Guard Chomp is great against Megalopony, it could beat. Um, Good against Bulu, but Mega Horn you gotta watch out for, of course. Yeah, so it's just a really practical Pokemon. It does well against a whole slew of other things as well, but that's the gist of it. It's just really bulky. It could be Calm Mind, Restore Power, or more likely the utility set Thunder Wave, Bolt Beam, Psychic, Hidden Power Fire, Defog. Yeah, a whole bunch of things to use. Of course, they're going to be using Recover Roost as well. But yeah, Mega Latias is just a great across the board utility Pokemon. And personally, I actually don't use it as much as this reflects, but people like ABR are really good at using it on these balanced teams, and I definitely would recommend trying it out. It also synergizes and opens doors for a lot of things, spreading the right status or chipping the right things, so on and so forth. So it's great. Next up is Gliscor. Um, Maybe I was in Gliscor. Fuck, I don't remember where I was, but either way, we're gonna just go to Gliscor. We're gonna just keep going as we were. Gliscor rose to prominence late. It actually was during 2019, where pretty much where it just soared into popularity. Maybe even 28, late 20. No, I think this is actually like a recent development. I think it was like during OLT last year, and then into Snake, and people just started using swords against Gliscor a ton. I mean, there's a point where EO literally teched out versus someone and used Z Ice Clefable to make sure he got a kill against it. But yeah, Gliscor is bulky enough to tank things like Scarf Cortana or any one hit from Maul besides Ice Punch, or more importantly, counter things like Heatran. Um, and from there, it can kind of be a great special defensive Swords Dance user. It's a soft check to Tapu Koko and Magnezone as well. And Swords Dance is just really hard to deal with. Even things like Celesteal don't really beat it, but more importantly, you need to kind of risk things like Megaladios, Megaladias to beat it. And if you pair it with Pursuit, that's great. Or them like triple those, like Toxic Heatran or some like one of your own with like Thunder Wave or another setup super to match up well against it, and you're going to be in a great position overall. So Gliscor is just great. It can also run Defog or Stealth Rock on utility-oriented sets with U-Turn or Toxic, which is really cool. Overall, especially defensive Gliscor is just great in the metagame, and while of course it's beat down by like water types and overly powered physical types like Sewage Dance or Choice Band Kartana, Ice Punch Mega Mawile, Z Tornadus T, I don't know why I mentioned it among physical Pokemon, Ice Punch Mega Fighters, and so on and so forth, turn black. It still is great in the metagame. It walls a lot of things. It soft checks a lot of things. It comes in a lot. Yeah, my game against Corazon, I actually used it really well. Kind of example of that. But yeah, moving forward, Greninja Ash, Ash Greninja, if you will. I don't know why I named it Greninja Ash. I always call it Ash Greninja. But that aside, in my opinion, is one of the most potent special attackers in the metagame, perhaps behind Magee Rinna as the most right now. It's just a timeless major threat. It's always going to be A plus or S tier. Setting up spikes is phenomenal, but also just offensive presence is great. It's one of the best anti-offense Pokemon. You get a Hydro Pump or two off against a Magee Rinna, and then all of a sudden you're just sweeping through teams with Water Shuriken later on in the game, which is just very good. One could argue that even this is broken. I don't think I'd go that far though, especially defensive toxic still exists. Use Bulu and Chansey, Fairmatch. Seems like Rotom Wash, Magee Rinna can soft check it in the short haul. Um, yeah, but it's still super strong, and with the right amount of hazards and crippling and whatnot, you can break teams open with it. Personally, I love using Astro Ninja. Of course, it is a bit reliant on Hydro Pump if you don't use Surf. It's worth noting. But yeah, it's pretty much the only reason why you have to use Dark Resist in the tier right now, which is a plus for Clefable and Magee Rinna as well. Not fake Dark Resist, of course, like Mega Mawile, or fake Dark Resist like Tapu Koko, because if it's Roost, I guess it can kind of suffice, but not really. And not fake Dark Resist like Megalopony. No real Dark Resist, I mean. So yeah, Ash Greninja is just kind of the epitome of very strong and consistent, powerful Pokemon that's kind of like defining of the metagame state of bulky offense in SMOU, because it can set up spikes and do so much damage and is priority. Like it can kind of cover all the bases. And yeah, it is frail, and yeah, it is predictable. And since once you know its specs, like you know exactly what it's doing. But still, that's more than enough to make it like a very good Pokemon. And of course, it gets that Mega Evolution, that Ash Evolution off, and forget about it. It's destroying the entirety of the metagame. It's also great on rain teams, which I guess is just kind of like a cliff note here. But hey, you never know what you want to use it for, so that's great. Moving forward, Tornadus T. Probably seen better days in the metagame. Back when it like first rose to prominence, everyone and their moms was using it. But in all honesty, it's still probably the best or second best defogger in the tier, depending on how you look at it. Depending on if you count Landorus T as a good defogger, Gliscor as a good defogger, because they don't always use defog, of course. The Rocky Helmet set's great, but Z sets are honestly the best right now in my eyes. Being able to break through things like a weakened Toxapex or Gliscor is great. Being able to have that reliable one hit of Hurricane in like crunch time situation is great. Also, having the opponent constantly in fear of disease is great. Yeah, and you can also run a Z Fight as well, which is great against things like Tyranitar, Heatran, um, even do a number of things like Rotom Wash, kill Magnezone in one hit, and Excadrill as well. So yeah, a lot of merit there, all things considered. Torrential is a great Pokemon offensively and utility-wise. And the speed tier goes a long way, as it's faster than Cortana, Mega Latias, of course faster than Gliscor. Even outruns all the top boosts besides Coco, which Coco is one of the main things that can actually check it, hold it back in the long haul consistently. So that's great for Coco, but yeah, there still isn't a ton that you can do as a Torn user, I would say, for that matchup. But everything else, you're sitting pretty in my eyes. So yeah. Much like the Black White video, as I go further down the list, I'm going to not necessarily skip out on details, but I'm going to give Pokemon a proportional amount of coverage for their viability. So, for example, I'm going to talk for a couple minutes on all these Tier 2 Pokemon, but once you get down to Tier 3, it might be more like a minute. Once we get down to like Tier 5, it might just be like kind of like, oh, this is what it does, this is why it's okay or good, if you will. So now that we're down to Tier 3, these Pokemon are all Pokemon I consider to be like either low A plus or mid to high A range in my eyes in the metagame, in terms of like translating to viability rankings, if you will. Like I'd say the top two are probably A plus, and the next three are A. But yeah, all of them are great, nevertheless. And this actually rounds to the top 10, as we have 4 here, then 5 here. So Mega Mawile is my number 10, although you could argue Mega Alakazam as well. But at this point, each Pokemon is so close to the Pokemon above and below it that it's not actually a huge differentiator regardless. I do think there's a bit of a gap between Tornadus T and the next year, though, just because of the sheer utility Tornadus T presents, whereas a lot of these Pokemon are a bit more seen as like strong A-tier breakers, but they don't have like definitive like necessity on a certain type of archetype, if you will. So yeah, the Pokemon above are metagame defining presences, whereas these Pokemon are just strong filler types that can be great against certain opponents or in certain contexts and are generally consistent, but not things that you need to use in any context in my eyes. So I guess that's the best way to break it down. Anyway, Mega Mawile Sword Stance variant is great and devastating, of course, but the 4-attack variant has actually been seeing more and more usage. Even 4-attacks with Sucker Punch, but also just Ice Punch and Fire Fang in general are great. Ice Punch and Gliscor for a kill. Also not risking miss against Garchomp, but more importantly, Landorus T, that behemoth of the metagame offensively, a true juggernaut, is just slaughtered by it, even after Intimidate, and getting that kill in one shot when it's trying to pivot in, even with like a bulky set, and take a player off can be huge. Because all of a sudden, like, then they're weak to things like Earthquake from your own Landorus or Garchomp. So yeah, that's something that happens a lot early on in games, you're able to call that. A cool recent development with Mega Mawile, which admittedly is a bit situational. Like, for example, recently we saw Sub Punch Frank get walled by a Mia Nicholas, which was really unfortunate for McMegan. But a cool recent development was that Ice Punch plus Thunder Punch plus Substitute plus Focus Punch variant. Honestly, I'm not super huge in it. If I'm going to run Focus Punch, I'm just going to run it on 4-attack anyway. So I'm just going to raw Focus Punch predicting Heatran or the Ferrothorn to switch in. But it still has a lot of viability, and it's kind of safer and more consistent when you want to use Focus Punch when you use Substitute. What's also cool is that you always live like things like Scalds from Toxapex or weaker U-turns. Yeah, I think you can live in Ice Beam from Mega Latias if it's like Ice Beam plus Stored Power as well, but don't quote me on that. Other things you're able to sub on are like Clefable or a bulkier Tapu Bulu. As they don't want to stand against you, so you just force them out. And a whole slew of things that are weak to it physically as well. Yeah, but Mega Mawile, I mean, obviously it was Uber in Gen 6, but this generation it came back, and in my eyes it was relatively balanced. I think there were a point in time when I thought it was broken during 2019, honestly. But Mega Mawile is just super strong. It pushes the issue a lot on bulkier teams, and it fits on the balance as well. You can't really rely on it as a check to a ton of things, but with Sucker Punch, it does offer a lot of revenge killing prospects and sweeping prospects, so that's really cool as well. And yeah, Mega Mawile is just really strong and a really great pick against a lot of balanced players. Moving on, Alakazam is actually one of those balanced players' favorite Pokemon to use a lot of times, myself included. While my recent usage doesn't reflect it, I think Mega Alakazam is just a really practical Pokemon to use. Trace is so great in a metagame filled with their Generator and Magic Guard and even Protein here and there. Not to mention Flash Fire against Heatran, but on top of that, the Psychic plus Focus Splash plus Hidden Power Ice / Shadow Ball coverage is superb. It's very strong, of course, being able to 2-KO things like Physically Defensive Disable, do a lot of damage to things like Toxapex, and also 2-KO Heatran, Landorus T, Ferrothorn, Tornadus T. So yeah, just a lot of highly ranked Pokemon. Honestly, it's really hard to like keep Mega Alakazam in consistent check without something like Magee Rinna, Celesteela, Chansey, or I guess like Mega Sableye or Mega Scizor as well, depending on the situation. But yeah, it's great and it has a lot more longevity than you'd think an Alakazam would, so that's really cool as well. Um, but yeah, it also is like the main toxic if using in a game, being able to trace regenerate, even if it takes a toxic or a scald burn, kind of live forever in that sense. And also, there's always the possibility to keep it in pre Mega form and have Magic Guard if they have spikes up and whatnot. So that can also go a long way in some games. Moving on, Mega Latios is a great Pokemon, and I feel like it's kind of in the shadow of Mega Latias right now, and even Mega Alakazam a little bit. But still, the mixed attacking prowess makes it a very devastating Pokemon to encounter, and it functions as another great check to Gliscor with Ice Beam, which tends to run more often than Draco Meteor or Hidden Power Fire in the last slot. Earthquake Shirt from Magee Rinna and Heatran and Tyranitar. Psychic can nuke Toxapex to a ton to things like Landorus T or Tornadus T if you don't want to risk Ice Beam predicts. But of course, it's also just a main spammable stab move. And Ice Beam hits those 4 times for 1 kill, like Landorus T, the aforementioned Gliscor. It also takes Cortana out in one. Does a lot to opposing Megalotes, Tornadus T. Garchomp, of course, yeah. It's also a soft check to Z, Rock Garchomp, as you're able to tank one. Of course, Z Dragon, you're just dead as fuck. But yeah, it's just a really nice mixed offensive threat that still can check Heatran, still can very soft check Kartana, take advantage of Toxapex that likes Toxic, especially, and break teams that lack one of a specific handful of Pokemon. Yeah, next up I have Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn's kind of been an awkward Pokemon, as a lot of the times it's hard to fit it, as it's a grass type that doesn't do like super well against some Pokemon. Like for example, you aren't able to check Kartana as well as something like Tangrowth, or um, you aren't able to regenerate health or give yourself grassy terrain health, like things like Special Defense Tapu Bulu or Assault Fest Tangrowth back in the day versus things like Tapu Koko and Megalati, and you're also weak to Focus Blast from Mega Alakazam and so on and so forth. So kind of leaves you susceptible, but the thing that kind of differentiates Ferrothorn from those things is the fact that not only does it spikes, but also the steel typing makes it resistant to things like Psychic, Steel, Fairy, and so on and so forth. And also, despite not being a Dark Resist, it's a good initial check to Ash Greninja. You still want to pair it with a Dark Resist, don't get me wrong, but it can trade spikes with it if it predicts a switch, or it could come in on a water move and tank it at ease. And if it has a switch in on a Dark Pulse, then it's still taking well under 40%, assuming you're in a special defensive set. So that's great as well. All in all, Ferrothorn is just a timeless OU Pokemon, and you're not really surprised that it's great in generations 5, 6, 7, and 8, and it's going to be great moving on in the future as well. So, yeah, Ferrothorn's great. Next up is Garchomp. Garchomp actually was something that really rose to prominence in 2017, 2018, the Z Rock set, and it's just stayed a great Pokemon since then. Admittedly, it's seen better days. The Rocky Helmet set pretty much no longer exists, but you're seeing people flirt with the Z Dragon set a bit more in recent days, which is really cool for Megaladios and Megaladias in one hit. But the main downside of that, of course, is that Outrage kind of sucks. What else? Um, excuse me. Beyond that, it's also really good at just forcing up Stealth Rock while being an offensive check to things like Heatran, and it be able to tank any one non-Specs Coco hit, which is cool. On top of that, the ground type means that it's electric immune, and being able to like pivot into random Volt Switch and just cheese things and like the bulky offensive matchups that are kind of faster paced games. Always cool to get that momentum suck out of the way. And yeah, Garchomp's just a really threatening Pokemon in the metagame. One of the Pokemon that's just kind of a timeless offensive threat. It did take a bit of a dip in Oras and early SM, but now it's back up there. And I think Garchomp's closer to tier 4 than it is like the core of tier 3, but it's still a great option in my eyes. And I think that using it in a bulky offense is pretty cool. Although those teams admittedly are flimsy and struggle to break stall if Garchomp isn't getting rocks up and a kill. So you got to keep that in mind. Be careful, but there was a point in time when Garchomp was arguably borderline S tier, and this is within the last year and a half. So it hasn't fallen a ton. It's still great, and I think that more people should explore the Z set in the modern metagame. Moving forward to tier 4, we've hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 Pokemon. So Rotom Wash is number 15 for me, just to give a little look here. Rotom Wash, number 15. Rotom Wash actually was seen as like a borderline UU Pokemon for a while. And I mean, it took a while, but finally it became a great pivot. Especially defensive sets are cool. The Z set is actually really threatening. We saw a lot of that during the most recent official ladder tournament, which is great. And on top of that, being able to check Tornadus T is good. Protein Greninja as well. Soft, very soft check Heatran. Pivot around Toxapex or threaten to kill it in one shot with Z Thunder. and so on and so forth. There are a lot of things you can do. The sponge of a washing machine. Wow, that was not my best terminology there, but just Rotom W is a great sponge. The washing machine does so much work, generating momentum. It could also be a defogger in a pinch with Yap and Berry, although I prefer Wisp or Thunder Wave plus pain. Specifically, Wisp is great for Ferrothorn right now, but Paralysis, of course, can help a lot of teams in a lot of different ways, so it's worth noting. But yeah, Rotom W is just a good option right now. I definitely advise trying it out, especially the Z sets. I think they're a little underrated right now. But yeah, Rotom W doing Rotom W things, no shocker there. Next up, I rank three Mega Evolutions in a row, and this is kind of by coincidence at first, but not for the latter two. Mega Scizor is the next Pokemon I have, and the main thing that I love about it is the fact that it checks Magee Rinna pretty well, barring Z Focus Blast or Z Thunderbolt. But also, the biggest thing, the single biggest thing, is that it's a great answer to Cortana. Yes, Swords Dance sets, it casts U-Turn out to Revenge Killer on, but still, Swords Dance plus Sacred Sword is increasingly uncommon, and it checks Choice Banded and Choice Scarf with ease, which is really cool. And it even is a nice Swords Dance sweeper if you're not facing things like Toxapex, Magnezone, or Celesteela. So yeah, that can go a long way as well. Overall, it offers a lot of utility. It's a nice soft check to Psychic Spam, barring Hidden Power Fire or Choice Specs Modest Tapu Lele, especially if you EV it well. And U-turn after like sponging things from Cortana or Gliscor or Magirna can lead to revenge killing opportunities, and it also is great against Megalodies that lack Hidden Power Fire. Yeah, so this is pretty cool. It also can beat non-Fire Fang Mawile, by the way, but you don't really want to rely on that. I mean, if it gets a Sword Sense up, it can do a Kyoyu as well, so you got to be careful. But Mega Scizor is a great Pokemon. I think this is much better generation for it than Oras, in my personal opinion. This is a lot of practical applications, mainly the Kartana one, of course, but also like Bulu, Grass Spam, ground types that can soft check, so on and so forth. Sword Sense is good. There's a point in time when it literally ran cursed in the Zygarde metagame, which I found funny. You see like hidden power on it. You see like three attacks. You see pursuit on it, and more Mega Alakazam centric like checking positions, if you will. So yeah, it kind of has this built-in versatility, which is cool. And just a natural defensive profile of it goes a long way as well. Then you'll have the two Mega Fighters. In my eyes, both are better in SM due to the Mega Evolution mechanics and then Oras, but also just they tend to match up with the metagame better. You're seeing a lot less Slowbro, for instance, and a lot less physically defensive Clefable, or just really Clefable in general. You see it's in tier 4 here, where it's all the way up to the top Pokemon in SM, in Oras, and Mega Slowbro is within the top 10 in Oras, whereas Mega Slowbro is not even on this list here. Shocker, I know. So yeah, they're great. Mega Lopunny's kind of kept in check by Toxapex and Gliscor Flex Ice Punch, and it's just also hard to break through like Mega Latias scores with it, but it's still pretty good. I rank it a little higher just because it's a bit more of an offensive revenge killer threat, and I think it's really good against bulky offense right now. Those teams tend to rely on like a Landorus T or a Rotom Wash, like coming one time and like soft check it, but like that's not actually a good strategy at all. Spoiler alert. You're gonna get fucked in the long haul. So yeah, bring recovery, kiddos. Don't try that at home. Anyway, a Mega Medicham is just a potent breaker. Sometimes just most rebalance teams' issue is it's inherently inconsistent due to its relatively slow nature compared to things like Ash Greninja, Mega Lopunny, Kartana, Megalodios, other breakers of that nature that you see above, in conjunction with the fact that one high jump kick miss pretty much turns the whole game on its side, and it's also type prediction online. It's really susceptible to things like Baneful Bunker, Toxapex taking Rocky Helmet damage, and so on and so forth. It has to time ice punches really well. And if you do run into a Slowbro, you actually are kind of fucked. Same with Nicholas. So that's something worth noting as well. But yeah, Mega Manicham is still ridiculously threatening, and oftentimes it's worth the risk that you incur in using it. So yeah, I definitely consider it right square in the middle of tier 4, right ahead of Clefable, something that has unfortunately fallen quite a bit since the Clefable defined ORAS metagame. And Stealth Rock sets are still fine. This actually used to be really good against Stall because you could Stealth Rock with either Toxic or Combine as last move, and obviously beats Mega Stabilize as a fairy type, but also with one of those two last moves, it could also beat Zapdos and keep Stealth Rock up against those teams, which can go a long way. However, Wish sets are cool. Wish actually was popularized by EO and Mortis, and it's really cool with things like Zehitran, Shift Magirna, any Greninja set, Tornadus T, Mega Mawile, you name it. Yeah, just Wish Recovery can go a long way. Especially since those things tend to complement it well, that they beat things that it sort of like is beaten by, if you will. And last but not least, Combine variants have picked up in recent months, and I think they're actually kind of decent, although admittedly, Hayes Toxapex and Magirna do poorly. Before I forget, Life Orb Available picked up a ton last year, during 2018, 2019 in particular. And it's a really anti-metagame Pokemon. Life Orb 3 attacks. It's also picked up in Oras. Just kind of all direct byproducts of the SS rise in my eyes. But also, it kind of had like periodic usage beforehand. I think Ben Gay used it at one point. But yeah, Life Orb Clef's great. Don't sleep on that. Next Pokemon, something that I rank higher than just about anyone else. That would be Chansey. Oh, no, no, no. There we go. Chansey, yeah. Chansey's a staple on stall teams. And honestly, there are some like periodic Chansey offenses you can use, but I wouldn't recommend it personally. But I think that any stall has to have Chansey pretty much. And that alone warrants it to be here. Farming with stall and Smugtor is very easy right now in SM. ORS as well. I'm going to do an ORS list eventually, don't worry. I actually have it written out in this PM, spoiler alert, that I'm actually looking at right now in Tamagon with this. But unfortunately, it might not go up tonight because I'm going to try and ladder after this if my internet cooperates, but we'll see. Um, Chansey's just great. You know what it does. It's going to wall just the entire special metagame. It's decent, respectable physical bulk as well, thanks to EV Light. And just all those things combined with the fact that it's a really good utility presence. It could Toxic, you could Heal Bell, it could Stealth Rock, Seismic doing stable damage is great. Yeah, so it brings a lot to the table, and it's just such a special sponge that you have to rank it within the top 4 or 5 tiers in my eyes. I think a lot of other people would have it closer to the bottom of tier 4, alongside things like Celesteela and Zapdos that I rank lower, or maybe even below them, but personally, I rank it this high, so maybe it's just a testament to my play style and my usage, or maybe it's just my reflection on kind of how the state of bulky teams do in the current metagame, especially in right after a Smog Tour season. Like, wow, I love me some Chansey. But anyway, let's go down a bit more. Protein Greninja is something that I seldom use, but has a lot of threatening sets and versatility built in, with tons of utility due to the protein giving it a defensive typing that's different, and spikes or toxic spikes as well. Something that fits into a lot of more bulky offensive teams in my eyes. Things that I kind of tend to shy away from due to the lack of durability they have in this metagame, but still a very viable option. And you can always find a set to fit your team if you really have your heart set on using it. So that's definitely kind of a low A, high A minus Pokemon as well. And finally, I have Magnezone, which traps things like the aforementioned Mega Scizor and Ferrothorn, as well as C-Set's doing phenomenally against Mega Mall while even being able to sub on Sucker Punch, and any choice Cortana as well. So yeah, Magnezone has a very strong niche in this metagame. While it's not able to do like the whole Scarf and Trap Mega Metagross thing like it can in Oras, it has a ton of other practical applications that I just noted. And another one that we'll get to in a bit is Celesteela. Checking that is pretty important as well. So Magnezone, all things considered, is great. Now let's get down to Tier 5. Tier 5 consists of Mega Tyranitar, Tapu Koko, Tangrowth, Tapu Fini, Zapdos, Celesteela, Tapu Bulu, and Tapu Lele. The fact that it includes all Tapus is kind of funny, but we'll get to that after we discuss the top of the tier, Mega Tyranitar. In my eyes, Mega Tyranitar has actually established itself as a really cool presence in the metagame. Sand teams have picked up a little bit in SM, but also Mega Tyranitar as a standalone rocker or Dragon Dance user is really threatening. I view it as something that's either in low A or high A minus rank, depending on the day of the week. Honestly, it could go back and forth, but it's just right squarely at the top of tier 5. Could arguably be bottom tier 4, but I don't think I'd consider it any in competition with any of these. I think Chansey, Greninja, and Magnezone are clearly more viable than it, or just a little better than it, if you will. But Mega Tyranitar is great. It's very strong and very bulky. I remember there was an official tour game when I took a Z Ice from Kyurem, plus a U-turn from Landorus C with it against Zamrock a couple snakes ago, before he nuked himself off the website for being a retarded, a dumbass, sorry, language, a dumbass pedophile. But that very unfortunate turn of events aside, Mega Tyranitar has always done me well. It's a staple on sand teams, of course, but also it's just really good standalone. Dragon Dance sets are even underrated in my eyes. Its speed tier actually becomes quite nice. I think it's actually still slower than like Ash Ninja, unfortunately, +1, but I digress. It's really strong. It's really durable. It has a practical defensive typing, making it do well against Heatran. It's able to deter Psyche Spam a little bit, even if it's obviously dying to Focus Blast, especially after Stealth Rock. Does good against Mega Latias, being able to trap those, and Tornadoes Chi as well, assuming they're not Z-fighting. And with a whole plethora of coverage moves, it's always able to have a nice offensive matchup against things that your team might struggle against, assuming you beat team build properly. So that's really cool as well. Next up, Tapu Koko. And now I kind of want to get into this whole Tapu debate. All 4 Tapus I view as like mid-A, A-minus kind of Pokemon. Like, they're mid-range. They're good, but they're not, like, great. None of them really have, like, too much distinguishability right now. In my eyes, Tapu Lele is the least consistent. There are a ton of matchups where it's just kind of useless in, but there's a much higher ceiling than anything else as well, as it's just such an absurd breaker, especially against all your teams. So, yeah, I kind of that trade-off, that lack of consistency makes me rank it the lowest of the 4, whereas Tapu Koko is just such a game flow dictator that it's always going to be able to be useful in forcing something out and provoking a certain sequence, even if it's not offensively threatening, which, honestly, the Bolt Beam combination makes it really threatening. A lot of teams rely on things that aren't really great for it. Like, either they have a grass type or they're kind of weak to it, if you will, especially when paired with the momentum it generates. So, yeah, Tapu Koko rank at the top, but it's not a huge leap between 1 and 4, between Coco and Lele. And the things that are between it, Tapu Fini, it's a good defogger. It's a soft check to things like Greninja, Heatran, and it also just has a lot of utility. You can run a Whirlpool set, you can run Taunt, Knock Off, Nature's Madness, etc. So yeah, Fini's cool. And then Tapu Bulu, which I loved hammering shit out with the Choice Band set or Swords Dance C sets, but honestly, Choice Scarf and especially Defensive and Assault Vest have seen so much better days. I don't think any of those sets are great right now, so I kind of rank it third and Fini second. But all four are within the same little realm of viability, and I think that's kind of cool how it's settled that way. Anyway, the non Tapus in the tier, Tangrowth, Zapdos, Celesteela, are all okay defensive oriented presences, unless you're facing like an automized Z Celesteela or a Z Zapdos with max special attack, which are seen few far in between nowadays. But Tangrowth is great, especially the Rocky Helmet set is really good. A Premier Cortana set, and great against ground types, barring a Z Flying variant of Landorus T. It's also kind of good against Gliscor, especially if you're on Warrior Seed or Giga Drain, Placid Bar Ice, or Leaf Storm. Mega Mawile, it can kind of soft check if you're not switching to Play Rough or Ice Punch, if you will. It also does great against Mega Lopunny and Tapu Bulu that we just talked about. So yeah, it has a lot of things to add to the table. Assault Vest has seen so much better days, but it is great against Greninja, specifically Ash Greninja, and you can soft check things like Mega Alakazam as well. Moving on, Celesteela, actually Zapdos, sorry, Zapdos went first, is a really good defogger in the metagame. It matches up well with most like Heatran or Trendstar rockers, which can be cool. However, the Rising Gliscor hasn't been very kind to it. And honestly, also Magnezone seeing a lot more usage with trap things that Heatwave Zapdos as well against also has been kind to it, but with pressure, it's still superb on stall teams, and with static, it's still okay on like balance, even bulky offensive teams and crippling specific things while being in Cortana and a Scarf Landorus check as well. Sorry, just getting rid of water. And finally, Celesteela, a Pokemon that used to be like an A+ tier Pokemon consensus, but it's fallen off so much in recent months, and perhaps seeing it this slow is very shocking to you guys, but honestly, look at how it performs in tournaments like SPL or even Snake. You see it really doesn't win much, and it's so easy to take advantage of. Even if Leech Seed always passive damage, we're seeing a lot of Heatran, or more like things like Wishclaff to help replenish the health of Pokemon like that. On top of Toxic's running the metagame, just completely taking advantage of it. And I feel like Celesteela, while it's a great Pokemon, the metagame just completely shits on it right now, and that is held against it pretty strongly, unfortunately. So yeah, these are my like tiers. I think this is like top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Top 30 Pokemon. Yeah, top 30 Pokemon in the metagame. So if you enjoyed this, leave a like. And if you want to see more of these, or you have any questions or comments on my list, please leave a comment. Or if you just want to say, hey, Finch, good work, or hey, buddy, how you doing? Leave a comment on that as well, of course. And if you like all my content or most of my content, feel free to subscribe. It really does mean a lot to me, liking, commenting, subscribing. So do that. Makes my day sometimes, or makes my day worse other times if you guys are idiots about it. So you have the power to control my days. But if you stick around to this point, I have a little treat. I also have honorable mentions. In my opinion, next 5 best Pokemon in the metagame. I've ranked Superior, Ditto, Como-O, Victini, and it was between Slowbro, Mega Aggron, Excadrill, which honestly probably should be over at Jirachi in hindsight. I think Extra should be there. Ryu Nicholas and Jirachi. I put these here. Syrup with Contrary is great. Ditto is always cool on fat teams. Como can be a Z user or a Sword Stance user, or just a bulky Stealth Rock setter, which is seen more commonly as. Victini, the Scar Final Gambit set's great. Also, you see very rarely does he Salbert set or Choice Band sets. And Jirachi just as utility presence as well. Can even run Scarf very rarely. It checks things like Mega, Alakazam, Tapu Lele, Tornadus T, etc., Magee Rinna, yeah. So yeah, I guess you got the top 35 instead of the top 30. I hope you guys enjoyed this little in-depth look on the SMOU metagame. And be sure to stay tuned for more potentially on Horas OU. Hint, 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 hint. So yeah, that's coming in the future. But for now, I hope you guys enjoyed my discussion on SMOU. Please like, comment, subscribe, as I said before. And have a nice night. It's Finch. Peace.